the other firm in the country right now that has this habitual patterns assessment. We don't know of anybody that knows about habitual patterns the way they do it, and so their work is very different. When they go in and change a culture, it's different because they have a knowledge base, and so someone will call us in. Then it may be me calling on someone or Liz calling on someone like I did one time, and I ended up getting the president of the company somehow. And I went in and I said, would you let me talk to you? And for 2.5 hours, I talked to her about what we did. And she said, I've never heard anything like this. And she said, I really want you to come in and work in my company. Before I went to see her, she told me she didn't even have a budget line for this kind of training. And by the time it was over with, she found some money. And I'm smiling because it happened that we could describe what we were doing and how we could make the changes.
And what happened as a result? Obviously, she contracted you to come in and help. Did you make a difference within the company?
I think we really did. We worked for that company for 6 years. And she was a very smart woman, and she said, we don't want to call them habitual patterns. Let's just call them improving communication and relationships. And I know that we made major changes. And also she wanted all of her supervisory and executive team to be taught the training programs. So today they're doing those training programs themselves because we taught all of them how to do that. And so they're using our materials and continue to build the company. I think it's a much more efficient company. It has a greater ability to communicate with each other and to really build significant relationships. And I think that would be true. We have a recommendation list that we could easily provide anyone. We're just careful about not providing names, in this particular radio show.
Well, that's perfectly all right. You don't have to do that. How do the employees of these companies react when you are, you're brought into the company and all of a sudden they're being asked to fill out forms and answer questionnaires? But how do they respond to that?
Let me give you an example. Speaking of this company that Jackalyn was just referring to, one of the things that we do is we teach people about this behavior that most companies do, and that's gossip, or what we call third-party communication. Now, when we first introduce this topic, people are appalled, and they're like, oh, we don't do that, and we don't do this, and yet we can sit there and watch them gossip about various issues that are going on. So what we do is we teach how to resolve the issue rather than just gossiping about it. And that means is that we teach people how to be consultants to someone so that if somebody comes and talks to them and says, let me tell you about such and such, we say, okay, what does this have to do with me? And help work through whatever the issue is. And then it's like, okay, now, when are you going to go meet with this person and talk to them and get this issue resolved? And there's a little bit more to the process, but the bottom line is we still have people in that company saying, that third-party communication policy was the best thing that ever happened. I use it at home as well as here, and I love that question. What does this have to do with me? So that's an example of how people may at first be unsure about how a policy is going to impact them or a change in process is going to impact them. But in the end, we typically have people calling us up years later when we're not even there anymore saying, I am so glad you taught me that.
And how is your presence introduced within the company typically?
Well, usually, we ask. The best way to be presented, of course, is by the president or the CEO. And we ask the president, the CEO, and the executive team go through our training first. Because if they're not willing to be committed to making the changes, then we've got a problem. And most of the time, the people that are underneath them are saying, hey, can't you change them because they're our problem. So if we don't get the president and executive team involved, then, it's very difficult. And I would say that we've not worked in an organization where the executive did not follow through, and they followed through to the nth degree. In fact, the first training program that I taught with one company was with the president, and she showed them that she wanted this implemented to such an extent that we had multiple sessions a day for almost several weeks in which she took the time and helped teach the course with me, and then it led to others. About another company, which I would mention, is that the executives they went through it, but they weren't very supportive and weren't willing to teach it. And so the president and one of the executives And then all the managers below them started teaching, and then, of course, the executives were embarrassed, so they finally became a part of the process. Mm-hmm. But I want to answer one other thing, because I think you asked a very good question. I think most employees would like to work in an organization where they're appreciated for what they offer, they're recognized, they're encouraged, and when we start addressing habitual patterns of behavior, such as excuses or justifications or rationalizations for things or trying to control something, they really began to really enjoy learning about it, changing, and so forth. And I will tell this on myself. One day I went in to talk to someone, and I said, I really need some help with so-and-so. And she said, what does this have to do with me? And I started laughing. And I said, thank you very much. I'll go talk to that person.
That's very interesting indeed. I was just wondering how the executive within the company informs the employees that you are there and that they're going to be taking questionnaires, they're going to be tested to a degree, and how they respond to it normally. Are they willing to go along, or are there objections?
Well, here's the thing. Most of the time, a company may have a organizational meeting where they bring everybody in from their various locations at a hotel or somewhere, and they'll introduce us. Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing and answer any questions so that they don't have an issue with it. We may go in and talk with specific groups in smaller groups so that we can answer their questions. So that's been another way that people have brought us in. And what I would say is that we may have about 10 to 15% of the organization that do not want to be involved in anything that's constructive. Right. And we're going to have that group. But what we work toward is having the 15 to 30 to 40, building a group of people that really will support the changes. And progressively, those 15% will leave the organization because they don't want to be in a healthy organization, or they will, they'll start trying to make a difference. And we've had both of those kind of things happen.
That's very interesting. Jackalyn, do you find that the employees are really honest with you typically?
This is fascinating to me, is that, believe it or not, they really are. This is the assessment itself, but I do two kinds of assessments, so I'll mention that. Liz and I do. They really, I'll say to them, this is confidential. I do not want to have this assessment sent to your work. I want to have it sent to your home email. I will then call you and we'll set up an appointment. And they don't seem to mind if my appointment with them to talk about their assessments in the business area. They just don't want anything in the email system of the business. Then another way we've done this is I've gone in and assessed people myself with another way that we assess people besides our habitual patterns assessment. And I go in and sit down for 2 hours and just ask them questions and talk with them about it. And each time they've been very cooperative, and they haven't had a lot of issues about it. They may ask me about the confidentiality, and what I say is, anything you say to me is confidential. However, you have to understand that I'm going to combine a lot of the knowledge base, and I am going to address issues. So I will not quote you directly, but I will have to address the issues since the company is asking me to look at what we need to change.
Right. The bottom line is these people learn a lot about themselves, don't they?
Yes, they do. And I'll give you, it was really funny. Liz and I were doing a makeup class for one of our companies. Yeah. And one of the women who had been most resistant said to me, "Do you know how much you've changed our lives?" And Liz and I kind of backed up and thought, oh, my gosh, what are we going to get now? And she said, "My kids like me better. My husband says I'm a better person after this training. You have really changed my personal life, and I look at myself differently in the workplace." And so that's what happens.
Liz, what's the ideal employee? Can you describe one?
Sure. I get excited whenever I meet someone who is really wanting to be a better leader, for both in their personal life and in their professional life. And what I mean by that is that they realize once they've talked to us similarly to how you're talking with us about seeing how habits that they've developed over time don't serve them well, They become more willing to clarify their values and to see how those values work within an organization based on their knowledge of their habits. They are continually growing and learning. They are willing to take some risk and make mistakes and be an example to others about how to keep on growing. They take responsibility for their actions, and they're willing to be proactive in resolving conflicts. You've heard us mention emotional connection. They know how to manage their emotions and thoughts so that they're integrated. Since so many times in corporations, emotions are poo-pooed or, don't do this or don't do that. Keep your emotions to yourself, when in reality that needs to be integrated to really manage and lead well. They work with having a willingness to have a clear vision about what they want and how they can contribute to their own personal lives and how that contributes to the organization. So that's an exciting person to work with.
No kidding. Have you found that employee?
Yes, surprisingly, it happens.
Good.
And it's at all levels of the organization. What so many times happens, having been inside the corporation, I know that the employees know what's going on in the organization, and so many times there are executives that are distant from what the employees really want to contribute, and to find those individuals at the employee level, at the management level, and at the executive level is really fun.
I guess the bottom line is, what kind of an impact do you think all of this has for the client after you've done your work with them? Has it made a big difference in the companies?
I think it's made a major difference. What I would say is that their environment has changed, and the values and the vision and mission that they've established for the organization become a living kind of process rather than just something written on paper. And the values become a way to define what kind of behaviors they want rather than habitual patterns of behavior that are destructive to the organization. I think that many of the organizations we work in, because we do inclusion, diversity, and social justice work as well, and I think that the employees see themselves as have a much greater chance of being appreciated and recognized for who they are and what they can contribute. They're well developed. They see that when a president and a CEO and an executive team gets invested in really giving this kind of training and development, then they must be cared about. And they see that. And so I think I'll give you an example. We have an organization where we've made some major changes in 3 years. And, of course, it's a city department, and so, the city can end a contract very quickly just because of a change in the mayor or something else. We have people that I see frequently because I am in other areas of the city, and they'll say to us, "Oh, we miss you so much, but let me tell you, I really do model the way every day. I encourage my employees. I remember everything you taught me, and I'm still practicing what you taught me." And to me, that's a real valuable thing and shows that it lives beyond us.
No question about that. Ladies, the time has just been flying by here. I haven't had an opportunity to point out. You have a really excellent website, and there's a lot of information here. The website is www.cloud-rainosek.com. Let me go through this. www.cloud-rainosek, which is RAINOSEK.com. There are a very different category, a number of categories on this website, and it really is full of all kinds of information. I thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to do this again next week, and I look forward to having you back with us again. Our guests have been Jackalyn Rainosek and Liz Cloud from Cloud-Rainosek Associates in Houston, Texas. Ladies, thank you very much for your contribution and for your comments. It sounds very, very interesting indeed what you're up to. You're a fascinating organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll do this again. Thanks again for being with us. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been our pleasure having you with us here on Close Up Talk Radio today. Again, our guests from Cloud-Rainosek Associates in Houston, Texas. I'm Doug Llewellyn. Thanks so much for being with us. See you next time right here on Close Up Talk Radio. Bye for now.